everybody. Today, I'm so pleased to have Danielle with me on the Divorce Magazine, which is part of our events that we're holding at the moment, which is all about navigating divorce. And today, Danielle, who's been a contributor to the Divorce Magazine before, is here to talk to us about the process of divorce, but from a different angle, not the financial side and not from the legal side. I'll tell you what she's going to speak about today. So before that, I'll tell you a little bit about Danielle. She's a highly qualified, I'm going to read it here on the screen.
Yes, of
She's a
course.
highly qualified relationship coach and the UK's first specialist in divorce coaching. She's a published author of After the Split, a book that I highly recommend. She's
Thank
got
you.
edition 1 and edition 2. And she's currently writing her first novel. Well done, Danielle.
Thank you.
The Undiminished Woman, and another one that she's co-authoring at the moment with Alex Swallow, which is going to be of immense help to other coaches who are building up their practice. So they're in the process of writing that. You're working on your title, you're almost finished. And I think a lot of people will need, and they do need help just building up their own private practices. So I think that will be really, really welcome to a lot of people, probably not only divorce coaches, by the way, even psychologists when they're setting up their own private practices. What do we need to know? Yeah.
Yes, because the problem is if you are not successful in this, you may be tempted to give up,
Yeah.
and that would be a crying shame.
Yeah, completely. And Danielle has worked in the field of divorce since 2010 and has worked with over 1,400 clients. She's a fully qualified coach with a master's in sociology and a master's in coaching. On the Divorce Magazine, if you want to read any of the articles that Danielle has written for us, you can go on there. We have Impact of Breakup and How to Survive It. And there's Why Do People Have Affairs? And the other one that we have is Coping with Divorce when your spouse leaves you. So really, really, it's those timeless articles because divorce keeps happening and those topics are still relevant today. I'm Soila. I'm a counseling psychologist and the founder of the Divorce Magazine. So today, Danielle, I came across your blog, which was entitled Studying Yourself When You Wobble During Divorce and Separation. And I thought, perfect for our navigating divorce events at the moment that we're holding on the Divorce Magazine. And so, yeah, please tell us, how do we steady ourselves when we start wobbling during the divorce process?
Thank you very much, Soila. I think the first thing to say is that it is completely normal to wobble. In fact, it would be abnormal not to. Of course it is, because we are going through something so enormous, a loss of identity, a loss of everything we knew before. Probably we've been betrayed as well in the process. For example, if somebody has left you without telling much truth, actually, for another person. So it's extremely difficult and completely normal to make a little bit of progress and then dip again. Completely normal. I was looking at clients I've had since the new year, and I was wondering, why have they stayed for a long time in their marriage, actually? Because you can also wobble about deciding or not to leave the relationship. And sometimes when you are in a marriage, the other partner may be quite adept at doing quite enough just to keep you there, and then obviously falls back into bad habits. So I looked at clients and I thought, well, what do they have in common? And I've made a couple of notes, which is why I'm looking down here. The first one is that they are all over the place. That's a very technical place for term, but actually that's what it is. They don't know what to think. They are low, confused, unhappy, uncertain. And in these situations, it's very difficult to take to keep going in something when we are not too sure. They may also believe what their partners has said, for example, that it's their fault if the relation, look what you made me do, is a sentence we all know. So they're scared of ending the marriage, especially if they've tried very hard to keep it going and invested so much of themselves in that. And of course, everybody hoped that things would get better. And even when a decision is made, there's still deep down a hope that our partner is going to realize what an error they are committing and they are going to come back. And also, a lot of people have a great deal to lose by ending a relationship, by financially, of course, but also socially. And some people operate in circles where, frankly, they're going to be dropped very quickly at the end of a relationship. So it's normal, first of all, to take a long time to make the decision. And secondly, even when the decision is made, to wobble for all these reasons.
Yeah, I really like that part where you're saying it's normal to wobble. It's normal to wobble.
Mm.
And just before we started recording, there's a quote that you read, and do you remember?
I like that.
Yeah,
I found somebody online called Dr. Julia Samuel, and in fact, I will refer to her once more before the end. But she said, grief, and we are looking at grief here, loss, is an emotional response to an event. So something unthinkable, unexpected happens, and we have an emotional response. Well, that's normal, isn't it?
yeah,
But somehow we're very harsh on
yeah,
ourselves, thinking, why can't I resolve this? Well,
yeah,
there's plenty of reason why we can't resolve this.
yeah.
So I like that very much.
Yeah, can I just tap on that part where you're talking about grief? Because one thing that I find that when I work with, because my work is very much with children, parents who are going through divorce to do with their children, not so much with them as the adults, but to help them navigate their children's feelings, emotions, and so forth. And one of the things that I have found when I do my assessment with the parents is understanding how easy it is to not really understand that going through a divorce is not just grieving for the loss of the marriage, but there's so much more that you're grieving for. Can we talk a little bit about the grief?
Absolutely. We grieve not only about, as you said, the end of a relationship, but first of all, there are a lot of people affected. And you mentioned children, also elderly parents, also friends and family. So all this is extremely difficult. And sometimes, for example, being humiliated out of a relationship, if there's been an affair or if everybody knew before you did, it's really difficult to handle. I remember a client saying to me years ago, I've lost my past and I have lost my future. And that sentence stayed with me because obviously she thought she had been married for over 30 years. They had children. So she felt that all that was tainted. But also she was looking forward to a happy retirement with her husband, who incidentally had asked her to go and buy a house, never visited it, and then said, by the way, this is your house now, and I'm going there. So she said, I've lost my future. But that is terrible.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, just that, what you said about I have lost my past and I've lost my future. Can I just ask how you then helped this client? Because I'm sure there are people who are going to be listening to this who are just like, absolutely, especially when they're in the beginning of the divorce process or they're really into it. What would you say to them if they think I've lost my past and I've lost my future? What would you
Well,
say to them?
first of all, it's important that they feel heard. It is true because I mean they're going to feel that their partner is bulldozing them into making decisions. There is a legal process taking place. They are completely losing control. So I think the first thing I want them to know is that their fear is valid. They need to be heard. It is true. They have lost the future as they had dreamt it. But of course, once they work through all this, they will discover another future, often a better one, by the way. But it is at that point they don't see it at all. And yes, it's true that they, for example, this woman had found a lovely cottage in the country, thinking it would be happily ever after, except she found herself on her own in the beautiful cottage. So yes, the future has been stolen from her. But then I work at, first of all, helping them through the worst of it because they are at a terrible time. In fact, I remember that client cried so much that I was running out of tissues. I had a box and she was using them all. Um, and then it's important, but equally, they can't stay there. You can't forever think, oh my God, somebody has stolen my future. That cannot be. So very quickly, you have to think of extracting yourself from this. So first of all, it's the survival, and then starting to think. And later on, when you work through, and often the relationship was not that good, actually, when you think about it. There were things which were not brilliant. You work through and start thinking of another future.
Yeah, yeah. And you said something there about, first of all, she can't stay there.
No,
But
no,
we know, you know, and I know
yeah.
that there are men and women
Mhm.
and spouses and ex-spouses who will stay there, and not just for the year, they can stay there for several years.
And that is so depressing to see because it is normal. I mean, you know, people have been punched in the stomach, metaphorically speaking.
Mm.
It's a huge thing. It's a huge shock. It's like a kind of a grenade in your life. And it's normal to take time. At first, you're winded for a while, and then you have to work through something extremely complicated, which makes no sense. But I would say that after a few months, you have to start thinking, oh, hang on a minute. During that time, if I'm not working through this, my life is on hold. My partner's life is not on hold. If there is another party involved, they're not on hold. So who is losing there? I think it's very important to see that. And
Yeah.
I also think that it is incredibly bad for clients to ruminate. You cannot stay thinking about what you've lost. You, at first, yes, you have to understand what you've lost, but very quickly you have to think and agree, even intellectually, that your future is going to be different, and you have to work through the pain. And unfortunately, there's no easy way of doing that. It's painful, but
Mm,
at the end of it, you find a way to grow.
yeah,
And I've had, as you say, so many clients, but I believe that they, at the end of it, I would say 99.9% of them have found a way to
yeah,
grow. And that's the success.
yeah. And what you just said there, I think, apart from what you had said about it's normal to feel the pain, but where you said, unfortunately, it's painful.
Yeah.
It is
Uh,
painful.
yeah.
But we don't,
Undoubtedly.
yeah,
Undoubtedly painful. I mean, I had written in the first book, you know, if I had the magic wand, I wish I see people, I mean, struggling in such levels of agony, and I have to help them. And I think it's very much about, yes, you are right. You are in that terrible place. I think that people need to be compassionate towards themselves. And sometimes people say, I can't believe I can't emerge from that. Well, I can believe. So you can't be too hard. You have to be compassionate. I remember again Dr. Julia Samuel, who I heard a few months back. She spoke about rituals in the recovery process, and I like that very much. She also called them beautifully habits of the soul.
oh,
And I feel it's lovely to, because you have to hold on to something. And she wanted them to start rituals which make them feel safe, grounded. And maybe if every morning they start with a walk, instead of staying in bed, unwashed, saying, pour me, I think it's quite nice to start with this. So I absolutely agree with that. And rituals are important. We know that in history, and they are grounding.
yeah,
And anything which can ground you at the beginning when you feel you've lost control, you are in kind of moving sands, is really important. It's those little stones that you can jump to in the middle of the mud to hold on to. Ah, yes, because I can do this and this. And if you have a, I don't know, even an invitation to do something, think about it. It's the next little stone to jump onto. And I really like that very much.
yeah. I like that too. And there's something quite empowering about creating your own rituals.
Yes,
You don't have to stick to that person's ritual or that person's ritual. It's
exactly.
creating your own ritual.
You
Uh,
own. I
I also,
remember clients saying to me, you know, at the table, you know what it's like in a couple. She said that night she sat in his chair. And that was important. It's nothing, but it was hugely relevant to her.
Yeah,
Of course it was. It meant, do you know what? I own this house. It's my
yes,
space.
yeah, yeah.
Huge.
What, Danielle, what about, okay, I don't know what percentage of your clients are men, because I know in my work, probably 97% of them are male. So they're mostly dads who have been court ordered to attend or who have been suggested to attend a triple P parenting program that I offer. And then I have moms who come in for other reasons. And I just want to understand a little bit if in your field you've seen different ways that men will cope, as divisive as it might sound, that men will cope, and different ways that women tend to cope.
I would say that's 50%. I'm an equal, 50% men and women.
Good.
So I find it difficult to answer that because, in my view, it's not men, it's people. There are people who struggle. Some of my women clients will say, well, men do this. I say, well, actually, no, people do this. There are people who have affairs. There are people who will evade trying to be put in front of the consequences of their action. It's nothing to do with men or women. So to me, I feel that much more. Now, in terms of coping mechanisms, in some way, women can speak more to friends, although that's a double-edged sword. Sometimes well-meaning people can give the wrong advice.
Yeah,
Men, not so much. And I think the reason they work with me is maybe that they feel lonely in this and they feel that
interesting.
they need
Yeah,
support. But no, I can't put it down to, but obviously also, you mentioned that you work with people who have young children. For me, most of my clients are a little bit older, and often the children are young adults or even they have left the
yeah,
nest. So
yeah.
it's slightly different. I don't deal with children arrangements. And to me, I refer to parenting coaches when there are issues like this. I don't deal with them.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you touch on something quite important there, which is talking. You said one thing, you said it can be a double-edged sword. And I know with my male friends, they say the same thing. They're like, oh, when we have a problem, we just go sit down and we go, hey, how's everything? And then that's it, 5 minutes and it's done. But then we've come to see the statistics in terms of the biggest killer of men in this country is suicide.
Indeed.
And so there is something to be said about allowing, or not even allowing, that's the wrong word, to get men to speak. It's so normal that you're
Absolutely.
hurting. When I work with the dads in my practice, I've seen some of the most amazing fathers who are just absolutely hands on and they want to be there for their children, but that is kind of taken away from them. And they will sit and they will break and they will cry and they can't understand, why this is happening. But they won't do the same outside with their friends, or, they'll just say, yeah, no, it's okay. It's a little bit hard. But, so I wish that, they could have this space that where they can just feel comfortably, safely, like we do, with
Totally,
friends. But I
totally.
want to talk about the double-edged sword bit because I
Yeah.
kind of have a feeling I know what you're talking about, but tell
I
us what you
think
mean.
so. First of all, you're right, and I work with clients like this. Whatever parent uses their children as pawns, as a, frankly, put the child first. And there are a lot of, there's a lot of evidence about that. It is so wrong. Men do it too. Women do it. It
Mhm.
is wrong, wrong, wrong. I think in the recovery process and to stop from wobbling, it is very important to spend time with friends. Friends have a huge role to play, not for advice. I still don't believe that. I much agree with you. It's about having a safe space somewhere where people are not judged and where people are not going to get the wrong kind of advice. But friends are essential because we are not, alone in the world. We need to be connected. And in fact, I would say a way to stop wobbling so much is to connect. And it's very, very important to build up those connections. The temptation when it happens initially is to stay in our shells and yes, for a short amount of time, but that it's important to reconnect and maybe actually to have normality, or at work, as a matter of fact. Normality. It's normal to go to the pub with a friend. It's normal to play sport with a friend. That's what you need to reconnect and to be reminded that you are much more than what has just happened. You know, that doesn't define your identity forevermore. And sometimes that break where you are not, oh, that poor person who's been left behind, is really, really important. And also, with a friend, you're going to laugh. And my goodness, I believe in that because sometimes you can forget. And having a good laugh is really useful. So, not being isolated during the process, but equally, friends. Yes, some friends have different functions. They would be slightly wary about the well meaning friends, and certainly incredibly wary. And in fact, avoiding like the plague the social circle and people who say, so what's happening now? As if that was, your life is about
Entertainment.
gossip. Yes. I mean,
That's
for goodness sake, the answer to that, I believe in very short sentences. Yes, I'm going through something very difficult and not comment because really that's for you. And people who think they can gossip about you are not friends.
So if I was telling you earlier on, like, when I was going through this book, which
Thank
I read ages ago, and then I was going through it again,
I
and I was
sent
thinking,
you the new copy, Soila.
yeah, there's so much in here. Like I was saying to you, this section where you say you will get better and you will find a new you. I
Mm,
know it's a process. And I'm
mm,
just remembering when I was going through divorce, you're pretty lost internally, mentally, and you will make mistakes where you will confide in somebody who will just fan the flames of your anger. um,
mm.
you will feel alone, you will feel judged, you will
Yes.
feel useless, you will feel like you have failed, you will worry about my future. What am I going to be? What am I going to, who
Mm,
am I?
mm.
All of that.
All
There's a
of that.
lot. And all that I remember just feeling lost. And when you're saying just staying in bed,
Mm,
because what's the point?
mm.
You know,
But the point is, you need to get up. My first
I
client
like
opened
that.
the door to me. She was in her dressing gown, and I said, "Ooh, shower, makeup," and we start working. To be
Yeah.
honest, she was my first client. My list of clients was not long. I could do this. But what you say is absolutely the spirit of my work. Yes, I have to help people through, but having been doing this for, 14 years now, what I know with absolute certainty is that eventually people emerge. And there is now something we speak about post-traumatic growth. And yes, it is a trauma, by the way, but that PTG, post-traumatic growth, I love that. It's suddenly because you've gone through something very difficult that you work it through, that you grow to bigger and better. And sometimes my clients say to me, "Oh, now 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, I'm much happier. I'm with a better partner. I'm with whatever." Or decide not to have a partner, by the
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
But they have it's decisions. And they are happier.
Yeah.
Really, it is true because we grow out of these mad things that we go through. For a while, we don't see that. Of course, we don't. But I always say to client, you will eventually. And yes, it's a new you. But I mean, I've been through divorce too. And gosh, when I remember what it was like, but I've emerged and have a much happier life
Yeah.
in every single way.
Yeah, yeah. Can we touch on the anger? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because you're the relationship person. I imagine that the person who leaves, sometimes they have processed the leaving while in the marriage. It's kind of easy in inverted commas to leave. But the
Indeed.
person who's been left, the anger, not so much even the pain, but the anger of how dare you? What did I ever do? I'm just thinking, what does one do with that? When you think that you're sailing along with your spouse
Yes.
like really nicely, and then suddenly he or she or they turn around and they say, actually, I need to get out of this.
I'm thinking about a client I was working with yesterday. At the end of November, her husband announced he was leaving. No real explanation. Immediately before Christmas, so 2 weeks later, he wanted to go to mediation. And because she didn't feel ready, he was saying, you're dragging your feet, you're this, you're that, you're the other. Well, I'm afraid, well before you can do anything, you have to process this woman is wounded. And for me, the first thing people will think is pain, this and confusion. What is it? Why? Why? In fact, most of them will never know why. But this yesterday morning, my client said to me, so we're looking at now January, and she said to me, I'm so angry. And I said, good, good, because she has moved from the pain where she feels it's her fault, when she doesn't know what to do, to saying, oh, dare he? And already she had put in place things where she was saying no. And I was pleased to see that, because that means that on some level, not a lot. First of all, she had lost control before. And also, for me, I work at trying to make a client see how to regain some form of control. And when they start being angry, they are more able to do this.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, she might be angry, and then the next day, she's so low. That's normal.
Yeah.
But eventually, there is a pattern and she emerges from this. So
Yeah.
when I hear that they're angry, I'm quite happy actually. Again, as long as they don't stay there.
Yeah. They don't stay there and they don't become destructive.
No, no, that's it.
Yeah, yeah. And I like what you just said about the, 1 minute you're feeling like this, the next
Yes.
minute you're like this, because it's not a linear process.
Oh no.
The recovery, it can be you take 2 steps and you go back and you will. So no wonder you're calling it wobbling, because you wobble until
Yeah.
you're able to then eventually, steady yourself. And
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it's again completely normal, but the trend is up. Even if it's 2 steps forward, one back, the trend is up. And the moments of wobbling will be less frequent and less deep as well as time goes on. So you have
yeah,
to hold on there. It's like, by the fingernail,
yeah.
hold on there. You get there.
Let's imagine, just before we finish, Daniel, let's imagine I am a man. My wife has just said to me, or my husband has just said to me, I don't want to be here anymore. I have met somebody, and all that is breaking out. And I'm feeling really, 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 really awful. And I come to see you, and I'm like, Danielle, I found your contacts online on the Divorce Magazine. Could you please tell me how I need your help? Where do you start, and what would that work look like?
So I get very few of this kind of clients because my clients are normally referred by lawyers and they are not coping. So um, so that's one bit. They are not coping. Somebody's just been told I'm going. I help people make decision. Now, a person who's feeling guilty because they have said it's the end of the marriage, it's rare, but actually, it's really good if a partner can say, I'm really sorry, but this is the end, and I've met somebody. I wish people would all do that. Instead, most people, at least the people I work with, have been at the receiving end of somebody who is not telling them the truth, who has been planning for a year or two to leave, who is blaming them for that. It's your fault, you did that, you didn't do that, trying to fit the narrative. And that, or even give no explanation. That first client I mentioned in her dressing gown, she came back from work one night to find a removal van on the driveway, and he went. And she never got any explanation. Now that is hard.
That's really,
Whereas an explanation like that, it's hard, of course, but
really,
at least it's honest, because otherwise you feel you've been lied to, and there's nothing worse. You deserve the respect of an explanation. And if you don't get that, no wonder it's hard. And it will take longer to recover, because how the relationship ends has an impact. No question about that.
yeah. There's a part where in your book where you say, well, right at the beginning, getting divorced, where you say only initiate proceedings if it is what you really want to do.
Yes,
Yeah,
totally. There are a lot of people who say, right, so this is the end. So there's no need to speak to a lawyer, by the way. Let's just agree. And, and you are bulldozed into a process which is completely out of your control. So at first, no. Take your time to think, what do I want? Often it's because actually the person who say they want it to be done very quickly, I've met somebody else. I'm
Mm,
afraid you don't jump to their tune. You need to be ready. But eventually you will see, you will understand that you can't make anybody love you.
yeah.
That doesn't exist. You'd sooner stop the tide, frankly. So eventually you're thinking, no, that's it. And then if you decide that's it and I'm starting the divorce, that is a heck of a big control that you've taken back. But only do it when you're ready. Another client, you had to wait, 6 months or more before they felt capable of that. Well, fine, fine.
Mm.
We, I
It
think it
is.
has to be when you're ready.
Yeah, it is, like we said right at the beginning, going full circle. It is a loss. When
Yeah.
somebody comes and announces to you that somebody very close to you has died, you need time to process. You'll sit there going, I don't understand, I don't understand. I
Mm.
spoke with them yesterday. How can they be dead?
Yes,
The same thing with marriage. I'm ending it, but what do you mean you're ending it? What am you know?
exactly. And you're right to make that comparison because I make that comparison with clients. The difficulty with divorce is that, as opposed to death, your partner is alive. Not only that, but your partner might be with somebody else. My
Exactly.
goodness, the one who is going to get the casserole and the sympathy is the widower or the widow, not the person who's been left behind. And it is so hard to cope with the idea that somebody has gone with somebody else. And yeah, it is incredibly hard. I really compare it with the feeling of death, lost that way, but almost worse at the beginning, because on top of this, you had humiliation, being lied to, all sorts of things.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, you possibly recover quicker, nevertheless. There's something there.
Danielle, thank you so much. It's a conversation that we can keep going where I'm thinking maybe we need to at some point talk about just focus on the shame and
Mm,
talk, yeah, of
yes,
a
yes.
failed relationship,
Mm. That
of
is
being,
huge, huge
yeah, because
highlight
that
to
can,
think
you
that.
know,
Yeah.
so I think, and then also the maybe on the other side of it, where it's the guilt. I don't know if people who leave relationships go to see divorce coaches because they feel so guilty for what they have done. I don't know. I
Not
can't
a lot.
imagine so.
Not
Yeah,
a
I
lot. No,
can't
no,
imagine.
because my work is really to make people look at the reality, and they
Yeah,
might not like this,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
might
yeah,
not
yeah. Of
like
course.
me.
Yeah,
But guilt, even if you both agree the marriage comes to an end, you're guilty. You feel guilty. You have children. We've spoken about that before. So guilt is a very valid
yeah,
emotion. And of course, even if you have been left, you feel guilty that, so what was wrong with me? Or what did I not
agree.
do? What did I not say? Well, probably nothing. It's
Yeah,
just, but, and that, on that, you mentioned the death of a loved one. It's the same. You feel guilty, did I do enough? I didn't say that.
yeah,
All sorts of things.
yeah.
Guilt and shame are usually, and if you manage to work through those emotions, you definitely, emerge quicker.
If you were to give us some tips to steady yourself, what
Ah.
would they be during, from when you
I'm,
wobble during divorce? What would
I'm
they be?
looking at my list, not ruminating,
Mhm.
regain. So maybe the not to do is that, did I put other negatives? Not looking at everything in terms of loss. But if I want to be positive, I will say regaining control sometimes is very small, like sitting in his chair. Compassion for self. I mean, let's not be too hard. Laughing, moving, taking exercise, journaling. Journaling is seen as, even if you write 2 sentences at the end of the day, it's very important to just, it's a way of saying something without it having consequences.
Yeah.
Eyes firmly on the end goal. I'm going through this, but I know I will emerge, and I
Yes.
will emerge in a better place. I think it's also important not to be. Some clients will do plenty of things. They, instead of doing nothing, they do huge amounts of activity. Sometimes you need calm because it's in space, a calm space, that thinking can happen. What else could I say? Uh, Friends are very important.
Mm.
Grieving for the future, instead of seeing it as loss. I've lost my past, I've lost my future. Yes, I need to grieve for that, and accepting that, it's huge. And then keeping hope. I know I will emerge even if I can't really see how. I know that, and I will learn from it. If
Yeah.
you manage to keep that perspective, and
Yeah.
it's like flexing a muscle, it gets easier.
Yeah.
At first,
Yeah.
it's hard, but it gets easier. And frankly, I can say, in all honesty, that at the end, all my clients, except one or two, but it's not a lot out of the number, emerge stronger and better. It is the truth.
It is. It is.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Danielle. As always,
Pleasure.
with
That's a
your
pleasure.
articles that we have, with your book, if anybody, I mean, there's a second edition. So if you can get this, especially, honestly, especially if you're at the beginning
Yeah.
or right middle part of the divorce and you're struggling with this, you know, from breakup to recovery, first things first, finding some relief. There's so much in here, and it's a tiny book. So if you're carrying it, it's not big, bulky. It's
No.
straight to the point. I think,
Thank you.
yeah, if you
Thank you
can,
so much. That was actually why I wrote it. The solicitor were referring clients say, tell us what you say to your client. So that was that. It's not about me. Some people write about them. It's of
yeah,
no interest. It's just trying to get people at the beginning or early in the process,
yeah.
and maybe in the middle as well. Yeah, that was the
Thank you
point. So
so much.
thank you. No, thank
Daniel,
you.
why don't you tell people how they can contact you?
Oh, thank you very much. So my name is complicated, but my email is Danielle at danielb.co.uk.
Okay. And
And
Daniel,
yeah,
written the French way.
that's it. I don't know if you can see my name on that. Yeah.
I mean, we'll have
Ah,
it on the, yeah,
they are good.
yeah,
Perfect. And it is on my website. It is on Amazon.
yeah,
But really, it was just written. It was not meant to change the world, simply to give support like I do to my clients.
yeah. And we'll have it at the bottom of the link anyway,
Thank
so
you.
people will know
Thank
how to find you. Thank you
thank
so much. I'll
Such
be in touch
a
with
pleasure.
regards to all the other bits that
Oh,
we need
thank
to
you,
cover.
Rita. An absolute pleasure to
Thank
speak
you.
with you,
Okay.
definitely.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let me stop.